Shalom, this is Amonute Tayac of Piscataway, Sophia Spiritualite, the AmaruKhan Miriyam, and we're here with a little video because something very interesting happened, and I had just done some research on this, and I wanted to bring this to you. So on Wednesday of this week, Biden went to St. Croix, and I said, well, why did he go to St. Croix? What's going on in St. Croix? And then today, the Danish queen abdicated her position after 52 years. So why is Biden going to St. Croix, the Danish queen running away from whatever it is, what's going on here? So I thought I would bring y'all this information and kind of maybe put together what's going on here. So let's talk about the slave rebellion in St. Croix and their emancipation. So this was in 1848. The slave rebellion on St. Croix and emancipation. The slave trade was abolished from 1803, but slavery in the West Indies continued. However, many called for abolition, and in 1833, the enslaved were freed in the British West Indies. This was also a topic of discussion in Denmark and the Danish West Indies. Peter von Scholten, who became Governor General in 1827, was a persistent advocate in favor of a gradual abolition of slavery. In 1847, it was decided that slavery was to be abolished completely after 12 years. In the meantime, the children born to enslaved parents were born free. The slave rebellion on St. Croix. But that was too little too late. In July of 1848, a slave rebellion started on St. Croix. Big crowds of enslaved laborers from the town and the plantations took complete control of the small town of Frederiksted. One of the leading men among the rebels was enslaved laborer John Gottlieb, called General Butthole. The situation was critical. Von Scholten saw no other recourse than taking matters into his own hands, and was in order to ward off a devastating rebellion. On July 3rd, 1848, he drove to Frederiksted, spoke with the rebels, and abolished slavery in the Danish possessions in the West Indies, effective immediately. It has since been said that von Scholten and John Gottlieb entered into a secret prior agreement, but there is no proof to document this claim. The Governor General had no authority to abolish slavery. He came under severe attack for his decision, both by members of the West Indian government and by slave owners. The owners had lost a large part of their wealth without knowing what compensation to expect. Peter von Scholten suffered a nervous breakdown because of the events and left the island soon after. So here's the Emancipation Agreement. Now, I can't read the top because it's in that language I don't speak, but I'll read you the part that's in English. Maketh known, 1. All unfree in the Danish West India Islands are from today emancipated. 2. The estate Negroes retain for 3 months from date the use of the houses and provisions, grounds of which they have hitherto been possessed. 3. Labor is in future to be paid for by agreement, but allowance is to cease. 4. The maintenance of old and infirm who are not able to work is, until further determination, to be furnished by the late owners. And this has his name on it. St. Croix, 3rd July, 1848. So, this is connected with another event they had in St. Croix known as the Fire Burn of 1878. So let's read this. October 1st marks a dark yet triumphant day in Virgin Islands history. The infamous St. Croix Fire Burn or Fire Burn of 1878. If you are familiar with the U.S. Virgin Islands, you may have heard of the heroines of this day, locally known as the Three Queens. Well, there's actually 4, but there's a reason why they're known as the Three Queens, and y'all should already know the maiden, the mother, and the crone when you see them. So, often they are mistakenly associated with Emancipation Day on July 3rd, but October 1st is their day, and their story deserves to be told. While the enslaved people of St. Croix gained their freedom without violence on July 3rd, 1848. Now, let me pause. The reason why they gained their freedom without violence is because Haiti had just had that really violent thing. That's in the other article that's related to this one. And that guy Peter von Stolten, he did not want that to happen on his island where all these people got murdered. So instead of going that route, this is what the Danish do. They say, you know what? More power to you. We walking away. That's how the Danish handle this. So just keep that in mind. Where you have the Danish queen abdicating her position on the last day of 2023. Kind of makes you wonder. All right, 15 years before the enslaved in the United States were emancipated, they weren't really free. Instead, they became serfs of the oppressive plantation system. There were no unions to bargain for better wages and working conditions, and the power remained in the hands of the plantation owners. So this is a thing in Frederiksted, and of course that's a conch shell in his hands. All right, St. Croix was a Danish colony in 1848, and just a year later, the Danish government passed the Labor Act of 1849 that regulated that freedom. It established a pitiful day wage that was meager at best and stated that jobs or plantation contracts could only be changed on one day of the year, October the 1st. Now, let me just ask y'all, why do y'all think it was October the 1st? You know, I kind of remember us starting our liturgical new year on September the 1st, right? So that October the 1st, our contracts was locked in. So they did the same thing. They started their fiscal new year in October, in September, and then October they gave them one day. Hey, you got one day to decide what you're going to do. Not the whole month so they could set themselves up and all that. Nah, one day. Okay? All right. With little to pay for things, living conditions were not good. The meager wages were not nearly enough to take care of families, let alone medical care. While under slavery, plantation owners had a legal duty to provide care and housing for the old and disabled. After emancipation, those duties were gone. Many of the formerly enslaved, though technically free, were in some ways worse off. The laborers of St. Croix endured oppressive working conditions for 30 years following emancipation until they absolutely had enough. On contract day, October the 1st, 1878, many were gathered in the streets of Frederiksted. It was a festive day, being the only day of the year they were allowed to move from a different plantation or get a new job. There were rowdy celebrations and drinking. West Indians have a long tradition of fetes, so you know the scene. Parties and drunken revelry in the streets. Eventually, the police tried to brutally shut it down, and in the midst of it all, a farm laborer named Henry Trotman was injured and taken to the hospital. Rumors started flying that he had been killed. Enough was enough. The people started to riot. They were rightfully enraged, and the fire was set. They began burning the town and driving the police and soldiers to barricade themselves in Fort Friedrich. And they have a documentary of this you might want to take a look at. Over 3/4 of the plantations on St. Croix were burned to the ground. Fields, factories, and homes. The town of Frederiksted laid in ashes. This is why today you'll see that Christiansted has a classic Danish colonial architecture, while Frederiksted has a Victorian-era style. It was rebuilt after the 1848 St. Croix fire burn. The three queens. Okay, 4. During the rebellion, the three queens, actually 4 queens, Mary Thomas, Matilda Bean, Axeline Elizabeth Salmon, known as Agnes, and Susanna Abramson, rallied the workers across the island to rise up. They performed rituals during the rebellion to empower their people. Now, you understand why it was referred to as the three queens, because they were using that Orion's belt. They were using those 3 sisters that we were talking about in the other video that these these make-believers use. They were using the energy from those 3 women. And that day, October 1st, is probably an important day. We should be more than likely celebrating that, right? Okay. The rituals. Okay. All right. They were revered women leaders in their communities who refused to back down, though they knew very well what the consequences of their actions would be. Queen Mary Thomas is the most known through history. She was originally from Antigua and lived at Spratt Hall in Frederiksted. She was unmarried with 3 children and had been arrested several times for theft, arson, and hurting her children. As was often the case, listen to this, as was often the case with the treatment of powerful women during the colonial era, this was more than likely an attempt to harass her and discredit her with her people. So these people have a history of calling CPS on us, saying that we're doing stuff that we're not doing. They have a history of that. Just keep that in mind. Today on St. Croix, you'll find many depictions and references to the three queens. You'll also see the family names of the queens' descendants across the islands. The iconic Eliza James McBean clock tower stands at the entrance to the Annie Aberson Pier next to Fort Frederickstead. So, listen, these women are still protecting this island to this day. That's what they're saying here. In the end, almost 100 of the rebels lost their lives and only 3 Europeans dead. Many were arrested. 12 men were shot to death near Frederickstead Fort, and 14 women were burned alive in Grove Place for the parts they played in the revolt. The 4 queens, Mary, Matilda, Agnes, and Susanna, were arrested and tried in Denmark, where they were imprisoned in the Christianshavn Women's Prison in Copenhagen. They served part of their sentence in Denmark before being sent back to St. Croix to serve the remainder in prison in Christiansted. While the conditions improved slightly after the uprising, they weren't a lot better. Power remained in the hands of the plantation owners and the Danish government. But the resilient people of St. Croix continued their fight for equality. So then they have, talk about this. So isn't it interesting that they're invoking Queen and, of course, Mary? That's no coincidence. That's no coincidence. And so all I'm saying is, if you have the Queen of Denmark abdicating her position without a fight, they know what's coming. Biden is there trying to figure out what he can do to calm the quote-unquote slave revolt that is coming, and there's nothing he can do. Those women, those Marys won't help him. Nothing will help him. This is like a last-ditch effort to get some kind of help from some celestial outside source. So they're going to Mary, which is the wrong one to go to. How are you going to go to Mary? How are you going to go to Mary? And you persecute Christians all across this planet. Yeah, right. You all I can say is this. Listen, we already know the plans for, just walk on by, let us suffer in silence. It's okay. No, it's not. We're not going to let you all do whatever you want while we sit by and say, they suffered enough. No, you haven't. I hate to tell you, you haven't suffered enough. You haven't suffered enough. So unfortunately for you, it's time. The time is up. And abdicating the throne is not going to get anything from me. It's not going to get, only you can get from me, the Lord have mercy. That's it. On your soul for what you did to these women, to this island, to these people. So it's too late. No need to run down. What is it? The Candyman? Candyman cometh. So shalom, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.